Hello, Shirley team. I hope everyone had a happy holiday with their families, and today we're here to discuss the January 2023 Supervisor Safety Meeting. Today, the topic that will be covered this month is safe driving habits for the wintertime. In addition to that, just as a reminder, please cover with your crews on a daily basis slips, trips, and falls. We cannot stress that enough. Every day, not just including the winter months, but now that we're in the winter months, we're going to have frozen ground in the morning, which will eventually thaw out in 2 to 3 hours and become slippery mud. And then there will be ice incidents along with snow. So please remind your crews of slips, trips, and falls. And always remember, the shortest way to get somewhere is not always the safest way to get there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Will Portell. For those who don't know me, I've been a mechanic with Shirley Contracting for 12 years now. I'm here today to talk to you about winter safety. Daily dues. Let's make sure you're checking the fluids daily. That includes hydraulic oil, engine oil, coolant, trans fluid if applicable. Some of them don't have trans fluid sticks. Clean off your tracks daily. That means daily, not when your foreman asks you to. Cold weather. If we get a hard freeze, the equipment will freeze to the ground. Let's make sure you're parking it on dunnage if available. If there's stone on the job, park on the stone. If available or possible, park on the asphalt. When you first start up the machines in the morning, some of you may notice a hydraulic restriction light. The fluid's very cold, which makes it very thick. And the machine thinks it's got a restriction. This is going to take probably about 15 to 20 minutes for the hydraulic oil to warm up. After the machines warm up, keep in mind the idle policy still is in effect, 3 minutes. Bear with me. The emissions on the equipment is very expensive and can cause a lot of issues from idling, so please refrain from doing that. Make sure your windows are defrosted and clean. Check the windshield wiper blades. If they need to be replaced, make sure you're writing it up on your checklist and turning it into your foreman. When climbing up to check the engine oil and fluids in the morning, make sure your surfaces are free of ice, dew, and frost, because the slippery conditions on the deck could cause you to slip and fall. We don't want that to happen. Keep the steps clean and free of mud. Maintain 3 points of contact while getting in and out of the equipment. Check your handholds for stepping or climbing. That's all I have. Thanks and have a great day.
Good morning, guys. I'm Patrick Crocker. I've been with Shirley here for about 2 years now. And for this video, we're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts with the equipment going into the winter months of the year and coming out of the winter months and into the spring. First, let's talk about keeping your cabs clean, free of trash. In the winter months, we tend to leave the trash in the cab, and that's susceptible to rodents running into the machines, chewing up all the trash, making little nests in your engine bays or your cabs. And that's definitely something we're trying to avoid, as it just creates more trash and possible, electrical problems with your wiring harnesses and any parts inside. On top of that, we also want to sweep our cabs out, keep the dirt out from underneath any type of track pedals in your excavators, your track loaders, in and around your seats, decelerator pedals in your dozers, and just everything in general. A nice, neat cab will prolong the life of the equipment. The more dirt inside of the cab, the more particles that those internal air filters are sucking in, and it's harmful to the AC systems and the air you breathe. It's another great reason to keep those cabs clean. So if you put a trash bag in your cab, don't just leave the trash bag there. Pull it out at the end of every day. Use another one. Let's try to keep the rodents out of the equipment. Next up, we'll talk about cleaning tracks. It is winter time, so that means with freezing ground conditions, we're getting the possibility of your machine freezing to the ground. So whenever possible, place your machine up on any type of, wooden blocks, 4x4 2x4s, things like that. If you can park on stone, asphalt, or old concrete, something like that, try to keep it out of the mud. Along with keeping your tracks clean, we are in the winter months, and that means that your tracks and undercarriages, tires can freeze to the ground. Now, with the muddy conditions, that means we want to park up on dunnage, we want to park on asphalt, stone, recycled concrete, anything hard. Try to keep the water from contacting the tracks and the material from underneath it. And that especially plays into your rubber tracked machines and pieces of equipment. Those rubber tracks freeze a whole hell of a lot easier to the ground than the steel tracks do, and generally those smaller pieces of equipment also don't have as much power to turn those tracks to try to free them up. When we're going through our machines in the morning, we obviously got to check our fluids just like a standard pre-op, right? So on heavy equipment, we're checking our coolant levels, hydraulic oil, our oil levels. Check your fuel levels, check your DEF levels before you start your shift. All those different things. For the drivers out there, you'll be including, transmission oil. Check your windshield wiper fluid, because you never know. So just do the same pre-op every day, but in the wintertime it's especially critical that we check these items. And be sure you're checking them in the proper position, right? Hydraulic oil for excavators, there's a specific way that you have to set that excavator to properly check the hydraulic oil, and it differs from brand to brand. So with a Caterpillar excavator, it sticks straight with your bucket flat on the ground, and that'll give you the proper level in your sight glass. After we've checked our fluids, in the wintertime we're going to want to warm up our machine, warm up our oils. Any type of liquid that's running through that machine is designed to run through it warm. So for a lot of equipment, what I like to do is just give it kind of an exercise in place in the morning, move everything in and out, get the oil flowing. For some of the next gen Cat excavators, our newer 325s, 336s, 325s, 315s, etc. On the monitor, it'll show an auto warm-up feature. If you click that button, it'll raise the machine's RPMs, and it'll purposely direct heat to those oil components and heat those up in place. That's great for if you're working in a tight spot and you don't have a lot of room to move the machine around, to stretch it out, bring it back in, so on and so forth. If you've got to move the machine to an area where you will be working, then you don't necessarily need to use the auto warm-up, as the oil will be heating up as you are moving to your work area. On top of that, it's important to note that the equipment, they're not heaters, so let's try to refrain from idling more than we have to. We understand it's cold, but every hour on the machine that you put on it reduces its life. The idea is to, if you're not using it, shut it off. And that kind of falls in line with Shirley's idling policy. When you're operating your machines, if you ever notice anything go wrong, if anything breaks, write it up on your pre-op sheets and your checklists. Be sure that you let somebody know, your foreman, superintendent, whoever's in charge of the job site, that machine needs to be worked on and is called into the yard. We are only as good as the people that call the yard to get things fixed. If we don't know about it, we can't fix it. So the faster things are called in, the faster we can get it fixed or get something swapped out in place of it to get it fixed. So while we're on our jobs, obviously we get our fuel truck drivers that come around and they fuel up the equipment. So be sure that your area has ample access to get them in to fuel you up. And while they're there, it's a great time to go ahead and grease that machine as well. So if you've got an excavator, drop your bucket off, let them grease, your quick coupler, your linkages, your stick, bucket, swivel. Same with dozers, let them grease every part of your blade, all your tilt cylinders, angle cylinders, and lift cylinders. And that really goes for any machine as well. Don't forget your articulation joints on your motor graders, your front end loaders, rollers as well. Those are commonly missed, so be sure they're putting a little dab of grease in there as well. If you ever need fluids, paper towels, windshield wipers, all that stuff is on the fuel truck. So they should be able to hook you up with all that stuff if you need to. Then when we're climbing up and down our machines, we're going to use 3 points of contact, right? You know, 2 arms and a foot, or 2 feet and an arm, or hand, whatever you want to call it. Every machine's a little bit different, but because it's winter time, you know, these surfaces are going to be a lot more slippery because of, you know, dew, freezing over, mud on your tracks, on your stairs. So be sure you've got good solid footing. Be sure your catwalks and steps are free of mud and debris so you don't slip. Eliminate those hazards before you even get to them. All right, I mean, that's about all I got for this. Thanks for listening to me go on and talk all this stuff. Hope you have a great new year, and see you on the site.
My name is John Van Horn. I'm with Metro Earthworks. Today we're going to go over safe driving habits and techniques for winter weather driving. Before you plan your trip, or while you plan your trip, you want to make sure that you have packed a bag with some extra dry clothes, some blankets, battery chargers, charging cables for your cell phone, and a flashlight. You want to keep these in your vehicle for your road trip, just in case anything happens. You have a change of clothes or some place to stay warm or some way to stay warm. Don't leave the bag in the truck over your vehicle overnight. You also want to make sure you pack some power bars or some water in the bag as well, so that way you have something to eat or drink in case you're involved in an incident and you're stuck and not able to get out for a long period of time. Before you do your road trip, you want to check over your vehicle. You want to check all your fluids, check your oil, transmission fluid if it's an automatic vehicle, coolant, power steering, brakes, and your washer fluid. Make sure all your fluids are topped off. Also go out, check out all the lights on your vehicle. Make sure all the lights are in working condition. You also want to check your tires. You want to check your tire condition, tread depth, and the air pressure in your tires. This will ensure that you do have a safe vehicle when you're driving down the road. When driving during the winter, you want to plan to be driving in adverse weather conditions. We typically don't get enough snowfall in this region to be prepared to drive in snow every day, but we do get plenty of rain. So to remember, while we're driving in the rain, we want to make sure that we increase the following distance and reduce our speed. We want to make sure that we have plenty of time to react to any vehicles around us. We want to make sure also that we have our wipers on so that we can see what's going on in front of us. And we also want to pay attention to the road spray of the vehicles around us. During the winter weather, it does get kind of cold around here. So if it's below 30 degrees and you notice that the road spray of the vehicles around you are being reduced, that can either mean that the rain event that we're driving in is ending, or that the roadway is starting to freeze. We want to be cognizant of all that. Because we don't get snow around here a whole lot, and people are not very familiar with how to drive in snow events, we want to make sure that if we don't have to drive in the snow, not to leave our house. The problems that we tend to have is that there are too many people out there on the roads with either front wheel drive or rear wheel drive vehicles that think they know how to drive in the snow, and they truly don't. They end up being involved in an incident, and they end up blocking traffic, and that's what inhibits the snow plows from doing their job to clear the roadway. So we want to make sure that when it starts snowing, if there's no need to be on the roadway, that we don't leave the house. If you know snow's coming, go out and buy your supplies beforehand. If you do go out driving in these inclement weather events, it's important to remember to make sure that your headlights are on, not just your daytime running lights, but all your lights, headlights and taillights as well. This is a state law that we have to abide by just to make sure that everything stays safe. If you don't feel safe driving in the weather, please don't drive in the weather. Again, like I said, not everybody is comfortable with or familiar with how to drive in the snow. When we get a heavy rain in the area, a lot of people tend to drive slower and drive with their four-ways on. If you're not comfortable driving in the weather, just don't drive in it. Wait for the weather to clear before you do anything. After a snow event and you go out to go to work, clear off your car, make sure that you clear all the snow off your vehicle, all the ice off your vehicle. Make sure that you can see out of all your windows properly. Any kind of obstructed view is not safe for you nor the drivers around you. Shirley's inclement weather policy is that if there's snow on the ground, then upper management will send out emails and other communications to let the foreman and other superintendents know whether job sites are working or whether the main office will be open or closed. If your foreman or superintendent tells you not to come into work that day, please don't come in. If you have to drive on the roads to either come into work and you haven't received that communication, if you don't feel safe driving on the roads, call your foreman and supervisor, let them know that you won't be coming in today due to the road conditions. We want to make sure that all of our drivers stay safe, all of our workers stay safe, both on the job and off the job. For our truck drivers, during the winter months, we want to make sure that at the end of the day that we bleed all of our air tanks down. We don't want to do it by pumping the brakes. We want to get out of the truck and actually open the valve on the air tanks. We want to bleed all the air out because we do tend to get moisture in the tanks, and if we leave moisture in the lines, then overnight they'll freeze and the lines will end up breaking, putting your truck out of service and eliminating your ability to work. All right, today we have Archimedes out here on Route 28. He's going to demonstrate to us how to properly check out a vehicle before he starts his day. So the first thing he's going to do is he's going to pop the hood on his truck. And the reason we want to do this before we start the vehicle is we want to check the oil levels and make sure that everything is acceptable before we start the vehicle and risk any kind of engine damage. And as he goes through, he's checking his power steering fluid, his brake fluid. He's looking at all the belts and hoses to make sure they're all in good condition, checking his coolant level and his washer fluid level. Once all that's been checked, he'll close the hood and he'll go ahead and start up his truck and turn all of his lights and warning devices on. And as he's walking around, he's also checking the tires and the condition, making sure that they're all acceptable. Well, I'd like to thank you for spending time with me today going over all the different techniques for winter driving, how to properly check out your vehicle. If you have any questions or problems, feel free to contact me or anyone within the safety department for more driving tips and safety precautions.